Inside prison kitchens, the dark truth about what inmates eat. A tray of food might seem simple, but behind bars, it tells a darker story. In America's prisons, a single meal can expose everything wrong with the system: corruption, neglect, punishment disguised as nourishment. What's really cooking inside prison kitchens, and how did food become a weapon in the justice system? Tonight, we step inside the kitchen walls few civilians ever see, and uncover what inmates are really fed.
Before we dive into today's powerful story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support helps us keep sharing these stories, and we wouldn't want you to miss any of the action. Now, let's get started.
The meal behind bars. For millions of incarcerated men and women in the United States, the daily prison meal is more than just sustenance, it's a symbol of control. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner are served according to strict schedules, often costing the state less than $2 per inmate per day. In some facilities, it's even less, around $1.15 according to a 2017 investigation by the Marshall Project. The numbers tell a story before you even taste the food. Feeding over 2 million people cheaply is an impossible balancing act. Cornbread instead of bread. Powdered milk instead of dairy. Soy filler instead of meat. The priority isn't nutrition, it's budget efficiency. But the deeper truth lies not only in what's on the tray, but in how it's made. Prison kitchens are supposed to follow the same health codes as any other institutional facility. In reality, many fall drastically short. Investigations in states like Michigan, Florida, and Texas have repeatedly found unsanitary kitchens, infestations, and expired ingredients. A 2016 Detroit Free Press report on Michigan's Aramark-run prison kitchens revealed maggots found near serving lines, undercooked meat, and food theft by staff and inmates alike. For those incarcerated, meals often become a daily test of endurance rather than comfort. Some inmates describe finding rocks, hair, or mold in their trays. Others say they go to bed hungry. But it's not just about bad taste or hygiene. The prison food system is tightly linked to the profit-driven outsourcing of state contracts. Private companies like Aramark Correctional Services and Trinity Services Group have faced multiple lawsuits and contract terminations due to alleged health and safety violations. Still, despite public outrage, the cycle continues. Because inside prison walls, few people are watching, and fewer still are listening. How food became punishment. In most societies, food represents comfort, community, or even rehabilitation. But inside many American prisons, food has also been turned into a tool of punishment, a silent, yet brutal method of control. Across dozens of facilities, inmates who violate rules can find themselves placed on disciplinary diets. The most infamous of these is known as Nutraloaf, a dense, baked brick made by blending regular meal ingredients together into one unappetizing lump. The loaf typically includes components like beans, carrots, flour, and leftover vegetables. All mashed together, baked, and served without seasoning. Some versions have even included powdered milk, oatmeal, and margarine, mixed into what looks less like food and more like industrial insulation. Officials have defended Nutraloaf as nutritionally complete. But for those who have eaten it, it's a punishment designed to humiliate. It's not just bad. It's degrading, said one former inmate interviewed by The Guardian in 2014. They know it's not about nutrition, it's about control. Over time, multiple lawsuits have been filed against states for using Nutraloaf as a disciplinary measure. In Vermont, 2008, a judge ruled that serving Nutraloaf as punishment without a hearing violated inmates' Eighth Amendment rights, protection against cruel and unusual punishment. Similar challenges have appeared in New York, Illinois, and Pennsylvania, often citing both the psychological and physical effects of forced consumption. Still, the practice has persisted in some jurisdictions under different names: disciplinary loaf, behavioral meal, or control diet. And it's not only about the loaf. In some prisons, entire food privileges are stripped away. In Arizona, under Sheriff Joe Arpaio, inmates were once served green bologna and stale bread, meals so notorious they became national headlines. Arpaio defended it as tough justice, even bragging that his meals cost less than dog food. But health inspections later revealed some of the meat was past expiration, and inmates reported widespread foodborne illness. When food becomes part of the punishment, it no longer serves rehabilitation, it serves domination. Nutrition turns into a message: you are powerless, and even what you eat is not yours to control. For many incarcerated people, this constant deprivation builds resentment and despair, conditions that often erupt into riots or hunger strikes. In the end, it's a cycle: bad food leads to unrest, unrest leads to punishment, and the punishment is more bad food. The business of prison food. If you follow the money behind prison meals, the story grows even darker. What began as a government duty, to feed those in state custody, has quietly evolved into a multi-billion-dollar private industry where profit margins often outweigh basic human nutrition. The rise of private food contractors. In the 1980s and 1990s, as U.S. incarceration rates exploded, states began outsourcing nearly everything inside prisons: medical care, phone calls, commissaries, and, eventually, food services. That's when companies like Aramark Correctional Services, Trinity Services Group, and Summit Food Service stepped in. At first, the arrangement seemed efficient: states could cut budgets while letting large corporations handle logistics. But soon, investigative reports showed a grim trade-off: the cheaper the contract, the worse the meals. A 2017 New York Times analysis found that in some state prisons, contracts were awarded to the lowest bidder, even when that meant serving fewer calories or cutting sanitation staff. In Michigan, Aramark's $145 million contract saved the state money but led to hundreds of health code violations within 2 years. Maggots in food trays. Food tampering by staff. Under- or overcooked meat. The list ran longer than most inmates' sentences. Eventually, Michigan terminated the deal in 2015, but not before thousands of incarcerated people had already suffered through unsafe meals. Corporate incentives versus human nutrition. Private prison food contractors are paid per meal served, not per quality. The incentive, therefore, is to serve as cheaply as possible. According to a Marshall Project report, some states spend less than $1.10 per inmate per meal, barely enough to buy a single fast food hamburger. In these conditions, calories are prioritized over nutrients, and preservatives replace fresh ingredients. Inmates often report being constantly hungry, prompting them to buy from commissaries, where the same companies sell overpriced instant noodles, chips, and sweets. In other words, they profit twice: once for serving poor-quality meals, and again when inmates pay for junk food to fill the gap. It's a system that rewards malnutrition. "They're running a business inside a punishment system," said one former Illinois corrections officer. "It's profit over people every single day." ProPublica, 2019. When contracts go wrong. Scandals have erupted in nearly every state that outsourced food services. In Ohio, Aramark employees were caught smuggling contraband in exchange for favors. In Florida, Trinity Services faced lawsuits for serving expired and infested food. And in Georgia, reports revealed kitchen workers being assaulted and underpaid, creating dangerous environments for both staff and inmates. Yet, despite repeated fines and public outrage, the same companies continue to win new contracts. Why? Because they operate on a national scale, lobbying state officials and exploiting budget pressures. In essence, the less the public sees, the more profitable the system becomes. The calorie crisis: malnutrition behind bars. Food is supposed to sustain life. But in America's prisons, it often does the opposite. Behind the bars and kitchen doors of correctional facilities, a silent crisis has been brewing, one of chronic hunger, nutrient deficiency, and preventable illness. The numbers don't add up. On paper, most prison systems claim to meet federal nutritional standards, roughly 2,600 to 2,800 calories per day per inmate, as recommended by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But what's written in the meal plan and what ends up on the tray are rarely the same. Investigations by the Marshall Project and Vice News found that calorie counts were frequently inflated or fabricated. For example, a meal labeled 2,500 calories might actually contain fewer than 1,800 after cost-cutting substitutions, like replacing beef with soy filler or removing fruit altogether. In Alabama's prison system, one former food service manager told reporters that menus were fictional, designed to look healthy on paper while actual portions were dramatically smaller. The result? Inmates losing 15 to 30 pounds within months of incarceration. In Mississippi and Georgia, multiple lawsuits have documented weight loss so extreme that judges cited systemic malnutrition as evidence of unconstitutional conditions. The nutrient deficit. Calories are only one part of the story. The nutritional quality of prison meals is often devastatingly poor, high in starch and sodium, low in protein and vitamins. Common staples include white bread, processed soy, powdered potatoes, and overcooked vegetables. Fresh fruit and dairy products are rare, especially in privately run facilities where storage and spoilage costs cut into profit margins. Studies by the American Journal of Public Health, 2016, revealed widespread vitamin D and calcium deficiencies among inmates, especially in facilities with limited sunlight exposure or poor dietary planning. Anemic conditions caused by lack of iron-rich foods were also found to be common, particularly among women's prisons. We were tired all the time. Our gums bled. We knew something was wrong, but no one cared. Recalled a former inmate from Pennsylvania in an interview with NBC News, 2018. The problem compounds when medical care is also privatized. Inmates suffering from malnutrition-related issues, like chronic fatigue, digestive disorders, or even scurvy, often receive minimal treatment. In one shocking 2012 case in Arizona, inmates reported losing hair and teeth due to a lack of fresh produce. The Department of Corrections called the claims exaggerated, but internal memos later confirmed nutritional gaps in the vendor's supply chain. When hunger becomes protest. When food fails to meet basic human needs, it often becomes the flashpoint for rebellion. Throughout U.S. prison history, food-related strikes have been a major form of protest, from Attica in 1971 to California's mass hunger strikes in 2011 and 2013. In California, inmates protested what they called starvation diets, bland, insufficient meals, often served cold or spoiled. The hunger strikes eventually drew national attention and forced policy changes regarding solitary confinement and food service oversight. But even in 2023, reports from Texas and Louisiana show that hunger strikes still erupt over food conditions. Inmates describe meals so small that they hoard peanut butter packets from commissary or trade cigarettes just to buy instant noodles. For those who can't afford commissary items, starvation is a slow, quiet punishment. A system starved of oversight. Why does this continue? Because oversight is fragmented, and accountability is rare. Most prison food inspections are internal, conducted by the same agencies managing the contracts. External audits, when they occur, are often limited to paperwork rather than unannounced inspections. As long as states can claim compliance on paper, few face consequences for serving substandard meals. Nutrition becomes another casualty in a justice system built to punish first, and care later, if at all. Cooking under pressure, life inside the prison kitchen. If food is the language of a society, then a prison kitchen speaks volumes about who holds power, who labors in silence, and who pays the price for every corner cut. Inside most American prisons, the people preparing the meals aren't professional chefs, they're inmates themselves, often working long hours for pennies an hour in hot, chaotic environments. The hidden workforce. In the U.S., more than 90% of prison meals are cooked or served by incarcerated workers. They wake up before dawn, around 3 or 4 a.m., to start breakfast prep. Under the supervision of a small number of civilian staff or correctional officers, inmate kitchen crews peel potatoes, stir massive vats of soup, bake bread, and serve trays to thousands every day. The pay? Often between 10 cents and 50 cents an hour, far below even minimum wage for prison labor. For many, it's the only job available, and one that comes with both privilege and risk. Working in the kitchen can grant access to food scraps or extra portions, a rare luxury behind bars. But it can also create tension, as food becomes currency within the prison economy. One former cook at Florida State Prison told the Marshall Project in 2020. If you worked in the kitchen, you had power. You could trade for cigarettes, soap, or favors. But if you got caught doing it, you'd lose everything. The daily reality of the kitchen. Prison kitchens are notoriously stressful. Equipment is often outdated, refrigeration is inconsistent, and cleanliness depends entirely on how closely guards supervise. Reports from facilities in Georgia, Illinois, and Texas describe rat infestations, broken stoves, and leaking pipes that go unrepaired for months. At times, meals have been cooked with spoiled ingredients because replacing them would cost too much. One 2017 Associated Press report from Michigan described inmates forced to prepare chicken with visible mold. When they complained, they were threatened with disciplinary action for insubordination. Burn injuries, cuts, and falls are common. Yet, medical attention for kitchen workers can take days, and safety training is minimal. In some facilities, inmates operate industrial equipment without gloves or proper footwear, violations that would shut down a normal restaurant instantly. Corruption and contraband. The kitchen, like the commissary, is one of the most powerful black markets in prison life. Food becomes a form of contraband and control. In Ohio and Louisiana, multiple investigations revealed kitchen workers smuggling tobacco, cell phones, and drugs hidden inside bulk food deliveries. Some guards looked the other way, while others directly profited from the trade. Because prison kitchens sit at the intersection of supply and supervision, they're a hub for corruption. The 2015 Detroit Free Press investigation into Michigan's Aramark kitchens uncovered over 200 incidents of staff misconduct, including sexual relations with inmates, theft, and intentional food tampering. It's a dangerous ecosystem where hunger, greed, and survival mix like ingredients in a volatile recipe. Pride and dignity amid decay. Yet, for some incarcerated people, working in the kitchen offers something more meaningful, a sense of purpose. Cooking becomes one of the few jobs where teamwork, skill, and responsibility matter. Some prisons even run culinary training programs that allow inmates to earn food safety certifications or gain experience for release. At Rikers Island and San Quentin, such programs have helped former inmates find jobs in restaurants upon parole. But these programs are the exception, not the rule. Most prison kitchens remain places of exhaustion, where men and women labor under threat, not for rehabilitation but for survival. As one former Illinois inmate put it in an interview with ProPublica, 2021. "We cooked for thousands every day. But we never got to eat the food we made. That's what broke me, feeding a system that starved us." When the system poisons itself, outbreaks and contamination in prison food. When you cut corners in the kitchen, someone always gets sick. Inside America's prisons, that someone is often thousands of incarcerated people, whose complaints rarely make it beyond the walls. Over the past 2 decades, outbreaks of foodborne illness have swept through correctional facilities from coast to coast, exposing the system's most dangerous secret, neglect that literally poisons those in its care. A nationwide pattern of contamination. In 2012, an outbreak of salmonella tore through an Arizona state prison. Dozens of inmates fell violently ill, fever, vomiting, dehydration. The official explanation blamed improper food handling, but an internal report later revealed spoiled meat had been recycled from previous meals to cut costs. In 2014, the Detroit Free Press uncovered reports of maggots found in serving lines at multiple Michigan prisons under Aramark's contract. At least one kitchen worker was hospitalized after exposure to contaminated food. The same year, the Tampa Bay Times reported that Florida's Trinity Services Group served inmates moldy bread and food crawling with insects. A CDC review in 2017 found that correctional facilities accounted for more than 6 times the national average of institutional foodborne illness outbreaks per capita. Yet few states release this data publicly, and even fewer hold contractors accountable. Cover UPS and denial. What happens when people in prison get sick? Most of the time, they're told to drink water and go back to their cells. Medical attention is limited, and complaints are often dismissed as exaggerations. In Ohio, a 2018 lawsuit revealed that kitchen supervisors pressured inmate workers to serve food despite visible contamination, warning them that refusal would result in solitary confinement. In Illinois, prisoners documented brown water, rotten vegetables, and chemical smell in soup in grievances, but their complaints disappeared into bureaucracy. When we reported maggots, they said it was rice, recalled one inmate from a 2016 Reuters investigation. They told us to eat around it. These aren't isolated incidents, they're symptoms of a system that values appearances over accountability. Because as long as the paperwork says, clean, nobody checks what's really on the tray. The human cost. Behind every tray of spoiled food is a human consequence. Inmates suffering from untreated food poisoning face dehydration, long-term intestinal damage, or worse. For those already malnourished, even mild illness can be life-threatening. In 2020, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, multiple prisons saw outbreaks worsened by contaminated kitchens, where sick food workers were forced to report for duty. In one Texas facility, a whistleblower told The Intercept that infected kitchen workers were ordered to keep cooking because the state couldn't afford to shut down meal service. The irony couldn't be sharper: a system built to enforce order was poisoning itself from the inside out. The silence of accountability. When reporters ask for transparency, states often cite security concerns. When lawsuits arise, settlements are reached quietly. And when contracts fail, they're simply rewritten, often awarded to another company with the same record. It's a cycle that leaves the same people, poor, voiceless, incarcerated, trapped between hunger and harm. And yet, the simplest truth remains: food is not just sustenance. It's dignity. And when a society denies even that, it reveals far more about its justice than any law ever could. Every tray tells a story. Not just of what's served, but of who we are. Inside prison kitchens, the recipe isn't just food and heat. It's policy, profit, and punishment blended together until humanity disappears. But the truth can't stay locked away forever. Because even behind bars, the hunger for justice never dies. If you found this documentary eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us keep uncovering the stories others leave behind. And as always, stay informed, stay aware, and question everything.